In the Viking era, when pleasing the gods and passage to the afterlife were all important, burial rites were unparalleled in importance. The Vikings were famed for pillaging, conquering, and frankly, demolishing anyone in their way. Yet despite a brutal reputation, Vikings held dreams of Valhalla, were buried with their finest possessions, and would go on as far as human sacrifice to assure their place. The Vikings also held fears of the afterlife, of not pleasing the gods, and of the terrifying power of the undead. Welcome to History on Fleek. Today we examine what funerals were like in the Viking era. For the Vikings, death wasn't the end of a journey, but the beginning of a whole new journey to the afterlife. The most desired honor a Viking could receive was acceptance into Valhalla, the legendary resting place of those slain in battle. It was believed upon acceptance to its majestic halls in Asgard, the fallen would drink wine among the gods, Odin himself, and fellow fallen warriors. According to Norse mythology, those fallen on the battlefield would be chosen by Valkyries on Odin's instruction for what was the highest possible honor. Those accepted to drink wine with the gods in Valhalla were warriors fit enough to fight alongside them in the great world-altering rapture known as Ragnarok. Valhalla was not the only route to the afterlife for Vikings, though without doubt the most prestigious. Helheim, the darkest, coldest, and lowest of the 9 worlds of Norse mythology, is ruled by Hel, the daughter of the troublesome Loki. It's said upon entry to Helheim, one can never leave, even the gods. Those who passed after surviving battle would go to Helheim, along with those who died of disease or old age. Nostrand was the deepest, darkest corner within Helheim, where the wicked, adulterous, and oath-breaking were punished. Helheim's entrance is forever guarded by a vicious, blood-hungry hound called Garm. Well, it's good to have a plan B, I guess. A burial rite of Vikings only available to those of the highest prestige and honor was ship burial. The scale of such a ritual cannot be understated. In 2018, Norwegian archaeologists discovered a Viking ship grave of a vessel some 65 feet long. So extensive was the ship, it was presumed for the burial of a Viking king or queen. In this kind of burial, along with their grave goods, the individual would be buried within the ship. Unlike other burials, the extent of this rite was far more lavish than traditional burial rites. Many of the grave goods would have been placed for decorative purposes, not just symbolism or status. Furthermore, it wasn't uncommon in ship burials for animal remains to accompany the burial. The ships used for burials were ships for leisure, not military or conquest vessels. In rare instances, a ship burial could mean a literal burial in the ground, but with ship-shaped stones or engravings placed atop the site. The esteem of a ship burial likely meant a Viking settlement or tribe had lost one of its foremost figures, liably a chieftain, a warrior of great import and standing to their community. The passage of such a figure would have attracted great numbers to witness and pay homage to the great warrior's life. Crowds of chanting and drinking Norsemen and women would accompany the ship as it was set ablaze. As the burning ship was sailed out to sea, all present would proudly witness the finest passage to the afterlife for a person of the highest honor. Well, anything to keep your reputation afloat for the afterlife. Of all the Viking burial rites, some remain visible to this day across Scandinavia, the famed tumuli. It's understood from the Stone Age till approximately the 11th century, burial mounds were a common feature of Viking society. A tumulus was a form of tomb in which the buried were entombed in a man-made hill or mound in the earth. Across Scandinavia can be found tumulus of different designs and purposes, oft depending on the time of their usage. Most commonly to the Vikings, tumuli were used as mass collective graves. The largest found in the Scandinavian region to this day is Raknenhagen in Norway. 15 feet high and 77 meters in diameter, the remarkable tumuli date to 550 AD. Among these incredible sites across Northern Europe, the archaeological finds from tumulus are as remarkable as the sites themselves. Many of these mounds in the ground literally contained Viking ships. Gronhaug at Avaldsnes contained a 49-foot ship, along with the sites of Sandfjord and Rolfsøy. Other tumuli have contained remarkable goods: 600-gram neck rings of pure gold, entire tubs of silver and bronze, and one mound in Norway contained a ship made entirely of oak. To this day, Denmark has preserved around 20,000 tumuli. These sites and their incredible history remains with us. One of the earliest and most popular Viking funeral rites was cremation. Funeral pyres were a staple of Viking burial, and their importance is outlined in the Heimskringla, one of the founding texts of Old Norse culture. Cremation for Vikings was symbolism in action. The pyre would be built to carry the fire's smoke as high as possible. According to this vehemently pagan society, the pillar of smoke from the fire of cremation was the deceased's very passage to the afterlife. After a cremation, the Vikings also had a long-standing tradition of collecting the remains in an urn and throwing them out to sea. Many cremations would have been concluded by simply collecting the remains and burying the clay urn in a shallow mound. You see, give or take a soaring public cremation, I guess we're all just a little bit like Vikings.
I do have this coupon for a cremation.
Viking burial rites commonly included burying the deceased with valuables and goods, akin to their antiquity counterparts in ancient Egypt. How valuable or numerous the goods were was dependent on the social standing of the deceased. All the goods buried faced the same passage as the deceased. A burial meant buried goods, and a cremation meant burnt goods. This held huge importance in the eyes of the Vikings, as only with the correct passage of rites could the deceased join the afterlife with the social standing of their lifetime. Doing otherwise could leave them a restless, wandering soul forever without a home. Some commentators have suggested the burial of goods was a practical matter in Viking society. In a society that did not possess inheritance structures or considered financial markets, the burial of goods may just have staved off conflicts of inheritance. This seems a theory upheld by the considerable array of assets found at Viking burial sites. Some show influences from differing cultures such as Christian symbology and jewelry, while others maintain the animal symbology found throughout the Viking culture. The goods buried with the deceased were to symbolize significant moments, success in their life, as well as the individual's status. A clear example would be a Viking buried with a considerable amount of arrows was likely a noted marksman in conflict during their lifetime. Gotta hand it to the Vikings, when the Egyptians tried this, they just got robbed. Among Viking funeral rites was not only the burial of goods with their departed, but, the burial of further people with the departed. Thralls, or as you would know them, slaves, were regularly buried with their masters. Along with a loved one, it was possible for a thrall to be sacrificed to be able to serve their master in the afterlife. Accounts from the Poetic Edda depict funerals of heroes requiring multiple slaves to be sacrificed for their burial. More amazingly, there have been accounts of widows being sacrificed, presumable to join their love in the hereafter. One controversial account of Viking human sacrifices belongs to the accounts of Islamic theologist Ibn Fadlan. In his 10th century writings on encountering the Volga Vikings, he was witness to a Viking ship burial involving a human sacrifice. The account dictates the norm of asking a thrall to volunteer alongside the deceased chieftain. Unfortunately, the account descends into something entirely sordid and abusive. The account dictates a slave girl being reportedly piled with alcohol before several men forced themselves upon her. The slave girl in question was eventually sacrificed to accompany the chieftain on his way to the afterlife. This uncomfortable terrain of sexual rites involving the enslaved at burial has been seen in retrospect as entirely ethically devoid and wholly abusive. Viking belief systems would have contended that the treatment of the slave girl was to make her a symbolic transmission of life force to the deceased in the afterlife. So, make of that what you will. And there you go. Exactly why we're not so much like the Vikings anymore. For Vikings that didn't please the gods, those who were regarded as wicked or evil-faced becoming one of the very things they feared, Draugr. Norse mythology and much Scandinavian literature holds cautionary tales of the undead creatures known as Draugr. Their stench was so severe, some accounts have people dying before even entering the tomb of a Draugr. Oft depicted as blue or black with decay and long inhuman claws, Draugr were malevolent with mystical powers, bringing disease to villages, cursing individuals, haunting the dreams of the living, shape-shifting, and possessing superhuman strength. The prime motivations of Draugr were greed and bloodlust, and their haunting could only be stopped through decapitation. That's Viking stakes for you. Please the gods or become a stinky, hideous White Walker prototype. This is History on Fleek, and we'll see you next time.